Sometimes the hardest truth to find is whether someone loves your heart or the name written on your bank account. At 5:17 on a rain-soaked Monday morning, Adrian Whitmore stood alone in the marble lobby of Whitmore Tower and stared at his own reflection in the dark glass doors. At 41, Adrian was worth more than $3 billion. By sunrise, he would be worth almost nothing. At least, that was what everyone inside the building would believe. He removed his platinum watch and slipped it into a plain canvas bag. The tailored Italian jacket followed. Then the silk tie. Piece by piece, the billionaire disappeared. In his place stood a quiet janitor in a faded gray uniform, inexpensive work boots, and a plastic identification badge bearing a name no board member would recognize. Adam White, Maintenance Services. Adrian studied the badge. For the first time in 20 years, he smiled without confidence. Let's see who notices a man when there's nothing to gain from knowing him. Outside, Manhattan awakened beneath a silver sky. Rain traced crooked paths down the 40-story windows while yellow taxis moved through the streets below like distant sparks. Whitmore Tower had always looked different from the top floor. From his penthouse office, Adrian saw an empire. From the lobby, holding a mop, he saw fingerprints. People hurried past him without meeting his eyes. Executives he had personally promoted walked within inches of him. Assistants carrying $6 coffees stepped around his bucket. One senior vice president nearly collided with Adrian, muttered, "Watch it," and continued toward the elevators. Adrian said nothing. That was the experiment. 3 months earlier, the woman he had planned to marry had ended their engagement after discovering a financial report falsely suggesting Whitmore Holdings was approaching collapse. 48 hours later, she was photographed with another billionaire. The report had been Adrian's test. Her departure had been his answer. Since then, something inside him had hardened. He no longer trusted polished smiles, charity galas, or women who somehow knew his net worth before learning his favorite song. So he created Adam White. No driver, no penthouse, no expensive watch, no surname capable of opening doors. Only a janitor earning $18 an hour. At 8:06, the lobby filled with the morning rush. That was when he saw her. Nia Carter entered through the revolving doors carrying a paper cup in one hand and a worn leather portfolio beneath the other arm. She was 29, with deep brown skin glowing softly beneath the cold lobby lights and natural curls gathered loosely behind her head. Her navy dress was elegant but modest, and there was something unusually steady in the way she moved, as though life had taught her the difference between being noticed and being worthy. Adrian barely had time to register her before a man rushing toward the elevator struck his cleaning cart. The bucket tipped. Water spread across the marble. Seriously? The man snapped at Adrian. Can't you people do this before employees arrive? Adrian's jaw tightened. Then Nia stopped. She looked at the executive, then at Adrian. Without saying a word, she placed her portfolio on a nearby bench, crouched beside the fallen bucket, and began gathering the cleaning cloths scattered across the floor. You don't have to do that, Adrian said quietly. Nia looked up. Her eyes were warm. Unafraid. I know. 2 words. Nothing extraordinary. Yet Adrian stood completely still. Because everyone else had walked around the mess. She had walked toward it. Nia handed him the final cloth and smiled. Rough morning. You could say that. Then maybe it gets better from here. The elevator chimed. She picked up her portfolio and hurried away. Adrian watched the doors close behind her. For reasons he couldn't explain, the enormous lobby suddenly felt different. Then he noticed something beside the bench. A photograph. It must have slipped from Nia's portfolio. Adrian bent and picked it up. The image was old, its corners softened by 20 years of handling. A younger woman stood outside a small neighborhood clinic, holding the hand of a little black girl. Adrian stopped breathing. Around the woman's neck was a silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. He knew that necklace. He knew that woman. And 20 years ago, Adrian Whitmore had watched her disappear from his family's life, carrying a secret his father had ordered never to be spoken aloud. His fingers tightened around the photograph. For the first time, becoming a janitor no longer felt like an experiment. It felt like fate. Nia Carter had no idea that the photograph she had carried for nearly 20 years was now resting in the hands of one of the most powerful men in Manhattan. By the time she reached the 23rd floor, her thoughts had already returned to the reason she was there. The Whitmore Community Foundation. For 6 months, Nia had worked as a program coordinator for one of its smallest outreach divisions, helping struggling families gain access to scholarships, job training, and emergency housing. The salary was modest by Manhattan standards, but she loved the work because every approved application meant someone received the chance her own mother had once desperately needed. "Morning, Nia." "Morning, Claire." She smiled at the receptionist and continued toward her desk, unaware that 23 floors below, Adrian was still staring at the faded photograph. The woman beside young Nia was unmistakable. Evelyn Carter. Adrian had not heard that name spoken aloud since he was 21. Back then, Evelyn had worked for his father, Charles Whitmore, during the final years before Whitmore Holdings transformed from a regional investment company into an international empire. She had disappeared suddenly. No farewell, no explanation, only silence, and one sentence from Charles that Adrian had never forgotten. "Some doors stay closed because opening them destroys more than it reveals." At 21, Adrian had obeyed. At 41, he was no longer interested in obedience. He carefully slipped the photograph into the pocket of his janitor's uniform. "Adam." Adrian turned. His maintenance supervisor, Mr. Delgado, pointed toward the elevators. 23rd floor needs someone. Coffee spill near the foundation offices. Adrian almost laughed at the coincidence. "I'll handle it." Minutes later, he pushed his cleaning cart onto Nia's floor. The atmosphere changed immediately. There were no marble statues or executives barking into phones. Bulletin boards displayed photographs of scholarship recipients, neighborhood clinics, food drives, and families standing outside newly renovated homes. This was his company too. Yet Adrian realized he rarely visited this floor. That realization bothered him. Then he heard her voice. "No, Mrs. Taylor, please don't apologize." Nia sat behind a modest desk, phone pressed gently against her ear. "We'll figure something out. Your daughter shouldn't lose her semester because life became difficult for 3 weeks." A pause. Nia's expression softened. "Give me until Friday." She hung up and exhaled. "You make promises like that often?" She looked up. Recognition brightened her face. "Rough morning." Adrian blinked. "That's my name now? Until you tell me the real one." For one dangerous second, the words struck deeper than she intended. He touched the badge on his chest. "Adam." "Nia." "I know." Her eyebrow lifted. Adrian immediately nodded toward the directory beside her desk. "Nameplate." "Good save." A small smile crossed his face. It surprised him how easily she produced it. He cleaned the spilled coffee while Nia returned to her paperwork. No performance. No attempt to impress him. She treated him exactly as she treated everyone else, with quiet respect. When he finished, Adrian reached into his pocket. "You dropped something downstairs." He placed the photograph on her desk. Nia froze. The warmth vanished from her expression. "Where did you find this?" "Near the lobby bench." She picked it up carefully, almost reverently. "My mother." Adrian kept his voice neutral. "She worked around here?" Nia looked at him sharply. "What makes you ask that?" The building in the photograph looked familiar. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then her thumb brushed across Evelyn's faded face. "She worked for the Whitmore family 20 years ago." Adrian felt his heartbeat change. "What happened?" Nia's eyes moved toward the windows. "I don't know." The answer was quiet. Too quiet. "She died without telling me why she left." Adrian said nothing. Then Nia turned the photograph over. There, written in faded blue ink, were 6 words Adrian had never seen before. "When Nia turns 30, tell her." Beneath them was a signature. Charles Whitmore. His father. And suddenly Adrian understood something terrifying. The secret had never belonged only to Evelyn Carter. It belonged to Nia. And in 11 months, she would turn 30. The past rarely knocks before entering your life. Sometimes, it simply waits on your desk until you are brave enough to turn it over. Adrian Whitmore had spent 20 years believing his father's secrets belonged to another generation. Now 6 faded words had made them his. When Nia turned the photograph face down again, Adrian forced himself to look away. He was Adam here. A janitor. A stranger. He had no right to recognize Charles Whitmore's signature. "My mother never explained it," Nia said. "You never asked?" "Hundreds of times." Her smile carried no bitterness, only an old exhaustion. "She always said some truths needed the right moment." Adrian glanced at the photograph. "And you believed her?" "I trusted her." The answer landed harder than expected. "Trust." Such a simple word for something Adrian had spent years treating like a dangerous investment. Nia placed the photograph inside her portfolio. She died 3 years ago. That picture is one of the few things I have left from that time. I'm sorry. Thank you. No dramatic sadness followed. Nia simply straightened the papers on her desk and returned to work. Adrian admired that. Her grief had not become her identity. It had become part of her strength. Before he could ask another question, a sharply dressed executive appeared beside Nia's desk. Nia, conference room. Now, it was Grant Mercer, director of foundation operations. Adrian knew him well. Grant had spent years perfecting the art of kindness whenever wealthy donors were watching. Nia followed him into the glass-walled conference room. Adrian lowered his eyes and continued cleaning nearby. Through the glass, he watched Grant drop a folder onto the table. The Taylor emergency grant was rejected. Nia opened it. Her daughter will lose her nursing program placement. That isn't our problem. It's exactly our problem. Grant leaned back. We have a donor luncheon Thursday. I need your team focused on people who photograph well. Nia stared at him. Adrian stopped moving. What does that mean? She asked. It means donors want success stories, not complicated ones. Nia closed the folder carefully. Then her voice became calm, controlled, dangerously precise. If our compassion depends on whether someone looks good in a brochure, then it isn't compassion. It's advertising. Silence filled the room. Grant's expression hardened. You're ambitious for someone in an entry-level position. No, I'm responsible for someone who asked us for help. Adrian felt something shift inside him. He had spent decades surrounded by people who agreed with power. Nia had just challenged it, without knowing anyone important was listening, especially him. Grant finally snatched the folder away. Request denied. Nia walked out. She did not slam the door. She did not cry. She returned to her desk, opened her laptop, and began searching for another solution. Adrian approached slowly. You always fight battles you're told you can't win. She looked at him. Only the ones worth losing something for. For several seconds, Adrian forgot the photograph. Forgot the disguise. Forgot why he had created Adam White. He simply saw her. Then his phone vibrated inside his pocket. A secure message from his private investigator. I found Evelyn Carter's archived Whitmore employment records. A second message appeared. Adrian, you need to see this personally. Someone altered them 20 years ago. Then came the third. Authorization signature, Charles Whitmore. Adrian's expression changed. Nia noticed. Everything okay? He slipped the phone away. Just an old problem. Nia gave him a gentle smile. Old problems have terrible timing. Adrian looked at her portfolio. She had no idea. By pretending to be poor, he had wanted to discover whether true love could see beyond money. Instead, he had found a woman connected to the one secret his billionaire father had taken to the grave. And somewhere inside Whitmore Tower, 20 years of silence were beginning to crack. Some secrets survive because everyone who knows the truth agrees to remain silent. But silence has one weakness. It only takes one person to stop being afraid. That evening, Adrian Whitmore sat alone inside a small rented apartment in Queens. Adam White's apartment. There were no panoramic windows, no private chef, no priceless paintings beneath museum lighting. Just a narrow kitchen, secondhand furniture, and the distant sound of trains moving through the rain. Adrian had chosen every detail carefully. If he wanted someone to know him without his fortune, the illusion needed to survive beyond office hours. But tonight, the disguise felt insignificant. Across the table lay Evelyn Carter's archived employment records. His investigator had delivered them in a plain envelope 30 minutes earlier. Adrian opened the first page. Evelyn Carter, Executive Accounting Division. He remembered her now more clearly. Quiet, brilliant, always carrying folders through his father's office while Adrian was still learning how power worked. Then he reached the final year of her employment. Several pages were missing. A severance agreement had been altered, and attached to the back was a confidential payment authorization signed by Charles Whitmore. $250,000. 20 years ago. Adrian stared at the amount. That was not severance. That was silence. His phone rang. Tell me everything, Adrian said. His investigator hesitated. Evelyn discovered something inside Whitmore Holdings. We don't know what yet. But after she left, several corporate records were sealed under your father's personal authority. Find them. There's another problem. Adrian's gaze hardened. What? Someone accessed those archives yesterday. The room became still. Who? I'm working on it. The call ended. Adrian leaned back, listening to rain strike the window. Someone else knew. And if they knew Nia possessed that photograph, she might already be standing closer to danger than she realized. The next morning, Adrian arrived at Whitmore Tower before sunrise. Nia was already there. She sat alone in the lobby with 2 coffees beside her. When she saw him pushing his cleaning cart, she lifted 1 cup. Peace offering. For what? For making you listen to my family mystery yesterday. Adrian accepted it. You remembered how I take coffee? Black. No sugar. He smiled. You notice things. So do you. Their eyes held for half a second too long. Something warm moved through the silence. Then Nia looked away. I found funding for Mrs. Taylor's daughter. Adrian raised an eyebrow. How? I donated part of my savings and convinced 3 co-workers to help. You used your own money? She needed it more than I did. Adrian stared at her. He had attended $1,000 charity dinners where wealthy guests applauded themselves for giving money they would never miss. Nia had given something that cost her. That difference mattered. You shouldn't have had to do that, he said. No, but waiting for fairness doesn't help someone who needs help today. The elevator doors opened. Grant Mercer stepped out. His expression changed when he saw them together. Ms. Carter. Nia stood. Mr. Mercer. My office. 9 o'clock. He walked away without acknowledging Adrian. Nia sighed. That sounds promising. Adrian almost told her not to worry. 1 phone call from him could end Grant Mercer's career before breakfast. But Adam White had no such power. And that was precisely the point. Dinner, Adrian said suddenly. Nia blinked. What? You helped me with a bucket. I owe you. That is a very creative interpretation of debt. Is that a no? She studied him. Not his clothes. Not his badge. Him. Friday. 7. Then she smiled and entered the elevator. Adrian remained motionless after the doors closed. For the first time since creating his disguise, he had received exactly what he wanted. A woman had said yes to Adam White. Not Adrian Whitmore. Yet before he could enjoy it, his phone vibrated. A photograph appeared from his investigator. It showed an old Whitmore document bearing Evelyn Carter's name. Beneath it were 3 words stamped in red, biological relationship confirmed. And beside Charles Whitmore's signature was another name. A name Adrian recognized immediately. His mother's. The truth does not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it appears as 3 quiet words on an old piece of paper, and suddenly, everything you believed about your family begins to tremble. Adrian stared at the document on his phone. Biological relationship confirmed. His mother's name appeared beneath Charles Whitmore's signature. Margaret Whitmore. For several seconds, the billionaire forgot where he was. The lobby lights blurred around him. His mother had died 12 years earlier after a long illness, leaving behind carefully organized photo albums, handwritten birthday cards, and a reputation for protecting the Whitmore family with almost ceremonial devotion. She had never mentioned Evelyn Carter. Not once. Adrian forwarded the document to his investigator. Find the complete file. No assumptions. I want proof. Then he slipped the phone away. At 9 o'clock, Nia entered Grant Mercer's office. She emerged 17 minutes later carrying a cardboard box. Adrian saw her before she saw him. Her portfolio rested on top. A small plant leaned against one side. Her expression remained composed, but her fingers were gripping the box hard enough to whiten her knuckles. He approached. Nia? She gave him a tired smile. Apparently helping people without authorization is considered insubordination. He fired you? Suspended. Pending review. Adrian's jaw tightened. Grant had no idea that the janitor standing 20 feet away could remove him with a sentence. Adrian reached for his phone, then stopped. If he rescued Nia, as Adrian Whitmore, the experiment ended. More importantly, she would never know whether Adam had been real. What will you do? He asked. Nia looked toward the foundation logo mounted on the wall. What I always do. Which is, keep moving. No self-pity. No begging. Just dignity. Friday evening arrived beneath a soft autumn rain. Adrian chose a small family-owned restaurant in Queens, far from the private clubs where people stood when he entered. Nia arrived wearing a simple burgundy coat. You're early, she said. So are you. That means one of us is nervous. Maybe both. She laughed. It was the first dinner Adrian could remember where nobody discussed acquisitions, investments, or his surname. They talked about books, bad coffee, childhood dreams. Nia confessed she had once wanted to become an architect because her mother believed buildings could change neighborhoods. What changed? Adrian asked. Life. The answer was gentle. My mother became sick. Plans became bills. Adrian lowered his eyes. And your father? Nia's smile disappeared. I never knew him. Something inside Adrian tightened. My mother said he belonged to a world that would never make room for us. Adrian thought of the document. Margaret, Charles, Evelyn. 20 years of silence. Do you hate him? How do you hate someone who was never there? Her question carried no anger. That made it heavier. Outside, rain painted silver lines across the window. Nia studied him. What about you, Adam? What about me? You ask questions like someone who's spent his whole life avoiding answers. Adrian smiled faintly. You notice too much. I've been told. For one dangerous moment, he wanted to tell her everything. His real name. The penthouse. The billions. The photograph. Instead, he said, my family had money once. Had. I walked away from that life. It was not entirely a lie. Tonight, he had. Nia reached across the table and touched his hand. You seem happier without it. Adrian looked down at her fingers. Perhaps he was. Then his phone vibrated. One message. We found the sealed file. Another followed. Adrian. Evelyn Carter was paid to disappear after discovering the truth about Nia's birth. His breathing slowed. Then the final message appeared. And Charles Whitmore was not the person who wanted her gone. Margaret was. Every family has a version of the past it prefers to remember. The dangerous moment comes when someone discovers the version that was buried. Adrian did not read the message twice. He did not need to. Across the table, Nia was still holding his hand. Warm fingers. Quiet trust. And suddenly the identity he had created to protect himself felt less like a disguise and more like another family lie. Adam. He looked up. You disappeared for a second. Sorry. Bad news. Adrian turned his phone face down. Complicated news. Nia studied him, but she did not push. That restraint unsettled him more than questions would have. They finished dinner beneath softer conversation, yet Adrian barely tasted his food. When they stepped outside, the rain had stopped. Streetlights shimmered across the wet pavement. Nia pulled her coat tighter. Thank you. For dinner. For treating me like losing my job didn't make me smaller. Adrian looked at her. A job could never do that. Something changed in her expression. For a moment, Manhattan seemed unusually quiet. Then Nia smiled. Good night, Adam. He watched her walk toward the subway until she disappeared below the street. Only then did Adrian call his investigator. Talk. Paper shifted on the other end. 20 years ago, Evelyn Carter discovered irregular transfers from a Whitmore family trust. She confronted your father. And Margaret, your mother, intervened. Adrian's grip tightened around the phone. Why? We found correspondence. Evelyn wasn't stealing money. She was protecting documentation connected to Nia. What documentation? A pause. Birth records. The city seemed to stop around him. Whose relationship was confirmed? That's what we're verifying. Part of the laboratory report is missing. Adrian closed his eyes. No assumptions. Facts first. His father had taught him that rule in business. Apparently, the Whitmore family had forgotten it everywhere else. Find the missing page. There's more. Someone inside Whitmore Holdings requested access to the sealed archive 3 days ago. Grant Mercer? No, then who? We don't know yet. Adrian's voice became cold. Find out. The following Monday, Nia returned to Whitmore Tower for her disciplinary hearing. Adrian was polishing the brass elevator doors when she entered. She looked tired but composed. Still here? She asked. I could say the same. My hearing. Nervous. Terrified. She smiled anyway. Adrian reached into his pocket and handed her a folded paper napkin. Nia opened it. 3 words were written across it. Tell the truth. She laughed softly. That's your legal strategy? It's affordable. I'll consider it. The elevator arrived. Before entering, she turned. Adam. Yes. If I lose this job, coffee tomorrow? Adrian's expression softened. Especially if you lose it. The doors closed. His phone vibrated immediately. The investigator had sent a scanned letter. Adrian opened it. The handwriting belonged to Margaret Whitmore. He recognized every elegant curve. Charles, if Evelyn tells the child when she is older, everything we protected will collapse. Adrian can never know what happened that night. His pulse slowed. Below the letter was a newly recovered hospital document. A date, 20 years earlier. A private clinic. And two patient names. Evelyn Carter. Margaret Whitmore. Then Adrian saw the handwritten notation at the bottom. Emergency blood compatibility testing requested for child, Nia Carter. His breath caught. The elevator doors opened again. Grant Mercer emerged first. Nia followed. But she was not carrying her box. Grant looked pale. Nia looked stunned. What happened? Adrian asked. She stared at him. They reinstated me. Adrian had made no call. Why? I don't know. Across the lobby, Grant glanced nervously toward the executive elevators. Then he hurried away. Adrian watched him go. Someone powerful had intervened. Someone who knew Nia mattered. And whoever had reopened those 20-year-old records was no longer simply searching for the truth. They were moving pieces around her. For the first time since becoming Adam White, Adrian understood the real danger. He had disguised himself to discover whether someone could love him without his fortune. But Nia Carter had walked into his life carrying a secret that might explain the Whitmore fortune itself. Sometimes the person protecting you is not the one standing closest. Sometimes it is the person who has spent years making sure you never discover they exist. Nia's reinstatement should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt wrong. By Tuesday morning, she sat at her desk staring at an email from Human Resources confirming that the disciplinary review had been closed. No explanation. No warning. Even the emergency funding request for Mrs. Taylor's daughter had suddenly been approved. Nia read the message twice. Then she looked across the floor. Grant Mercer had avoided her all morning. At 10:14, Adrian appeared with his cleaning cart. Nia immediately waved him over. Something strange is happening. Adrian kept his expression neutral. What kind of strange? The kind where corporations suddenly develop a conscience overnight. That does sound suspicious. She smiled, but it faded quickly. Grant won't look at me. Adrian glanced toward the executive offices. Maybe he realized he was wrong. Men like Grant don't discover humility on Tuesdays. Adrian almost laughed. Then his phone vibrated. A message from his investigator. Identified the person who accessed the Carter archive. Eleanor Whitmore. Adrian froze. His aunt. His father's younger sister. The woman who had served on Whitmore Holdings board for 32 years. The woman who had practically raised Adrian after his mother became ill. A second message followed. She also ordered Nia Carter's reinstatement. Adrian slowly looked toward Nia. So Eleanor knew. The question was how much. That afternoon, Adrian abandoned his janitor shift early and entered Whitmore Tower through the private underground garage. 20 minutes later, Adam White was gone. Adrian Whitmore stepped from the executive elevator wearing a midnight blue suit. Employees straightened instantly. Conversations stopped. Doors opened. Power had returned to his shoulders. He hated how familiar it felt. Eleanor was waiting inside his office. At 68, she remained elegant and formidable, silver hair swept neatly behind her ears. You've been difficult to find, she said. I've been busy. Cleaning floors. Adrian stopped. Eleanor smiled without warmth. You truly believed you could disguise yourself inside a building your family owns. How long have you known? Since your second day. Adrian closed the door. Why did you reinstate Nia Carter? For the first time, Eleanor's composure shifted. So you found her. I asked why. Because Grant Mercer was punishing a good woman for doing the job this foundation was created to do. That's not the whole answer. No, Adrian placed the recovered photograph on the desk. Eleanor's face lost color. Where did you get that? Nia. Silence. Then Adrian placed Margaret's letter beside it. Eleanor sat down. You opened the archive. Someone had to. You have no idea what you're touching. Then tell me. Eleanor looked toward the Manhattan skyline. Your father built an empire, Adrian. But before the towers, the private planes, the foundations, there was a small investment company drowning in debt. And Evelyn? She discovered where the money that saved it came from. Adrian waited. Eleanor turned toward him. It didn't come from Charles. The room became impossibly still. Whose money was it? Eleanor's eyes filled with something Adrian had almost never seen in her. Fear. Evelyn Carter's family. Adrian stared at her. That's impossible. No, Eleanor's voice dropped. What happened afterward was unforgivable. Before Adrian could respond, his phone rang. Nia. He answered immediately. Adam. Her voice was shaking. I came home and my apartment door was open. Adrian stood. Are you inside? No, stay outside. Go somewhere public. My mother's box is gone. His blood turned cold. What box? The one with all her old Whitmore papers. Adrian looked at Eleanor. Then Nia whispered the words that changed everything. They left the photograph. A pause. But someone wrote something across the back. What? Nia struggled to breathe. Then she read it. Ask the Whitmores who really owns their empire. An empire can survive a bad quarter, a public scandal, even a betrayal. But no empire survives forever when its foundation belongs to someone else. Adrian reached Nia's apartment in 23 minutes. Not as Adrian Whitmore. As Adam. He had changed inside the car, trading his tailored suit for the gray maintenance jacket while his driver waited 3 blocks away. Nia stood beneath the entrance light when he approached, arms folded tightly across herself. The moment she saw him, something in her expression softened. You came. You called. 2 simple words. Yet they carried more weight than Adrian expected. Inside, the apartment showed no signs of chaos. Nothing valuable had been taken. Her television remained. Her laptop sat untouched. Only Evelyn Carter's box was missing. That means they knew exactly what they wanted, Adrian said. Nia looked at him. You sound very certain. He paused. People stealing for money take things worth money. And people stealing secrets? They take history. Nia studied him for a moment. Again, Adrian felt the danger of being seen too clearly. She handed him the photograph. Across the back, beneath Charles Whitmore's old message, someone had written in black ink. Ask the Whitmores who really owns their empire. Nia lowered herself onto the sofa. My mother spent her whole life avoiding that family. Did she ever say why? No. But whenever Whitmore Holdings appeared on television, she changed the channel. Adrian sat opposite her. Maybe she was protecting you. From billionaires? From something connected to them. Nia gave a humorless smile. Same difference. The word struck him. For the first time, Adrian wondered what she would see when Adam disappeared. Would she understand? Or would every conversation between them become evidence of manipulation? His phone vibrated. Eleanor. He ignored it. Nia noticed. You should answer. It can wait. Someone might need you. Adrian looked at her. Someone does. Silence settled between them. Not romantic. Not yet. Something deeper. Trust beginning before either of them had permission to name it. The next morning, Adrian met Eleanor inside the Whitmore family archive. No windows. No assistants. Only steel cabinets and 20 years of carefully protected silence. Eleanor placed a yellowed ledger on the table. Evelyn's father was Samuel Carter, she said. Adrian opened it. The name appeared repeatedly beside early investments in Whitmore and Charles Capital. He financed my father? He did more than that. Eleanor pushed another document forward. In 1986, Samuel Carter developed an investment model that saved the company from bankruptcy. Charles promised him partnership. Adrian turned the page. There was no partnership, only a transfer agreement. What happened? Samuel died unexpectedly before the agreement was finalized. Your father incorporated his strategy, his clients, and eventually his capital into what became Whitmore Holdings. Adrian's expression hardened. He stole it. Eleanor closed her eyes. He told himself he was preserving it. That isn't an answer. No, it's the lie he lived with. Adrian stood slowly. And Evelyn discovered this 20 years ago. Yes. Then why pay her? Because she had proof. Adrian stared at his aunt. And Nia? Eleanor's silence returned. He stepped closer. What does Nia have to do with any of this? Eleanor opened a smaller envelope. Inside was the missing page from the blood compatibility report. Adrian read the names. Once. Then again. His heart seemed to stop between beats. No, Eleanor's voice broke. Your mother tried to bury 2 truths at once. Adrian looked up. What second truth? Eleanor placed an old hospital bracelet beside the report. Nia Carter. Then another. A man's name was written beneath father. Not Charles Whitmore. Not Samuel Carter. Adrian recognized it immediately. His older brother. Jonathan Whitmore. Jonathan had died 20 years ago. 3 weeks before Nia's 9th birthday. Adrian stared at the bracelet. Nia Carter was not merely connected to the fortune his family had built from hers. She was a Whitmore. And if the documents were genuine, the woman Adrian was falling for was also the daughter of the brother whose death had shattered his family 20 years ago. The cruelest inheritance is not money. It is a truth one generation buried and the next generation is forced to carry. Adrian remained inside the archive long after Eleanor stopped speaking. Jonathan Whitmore. His brother, Nia's father. The hospital bracelet lay beneath the fluorescent light, like evidence from another lifetime. Jonathan had been 11 years older than Adrian. Reckless where Adrian was disciplined, warm where Charles was cold. He had been the only Whitmore who could walk into a boardroom and somehow make everyone forget there was money in the room. Then, at 32, Jonathan died in a car accident. The family never recovered. Or perhaps, Adrian realized, they had never told him what there was to recover from. Did Jonathan know? He asked. Eleanor looked down. Yes. The answer cut through him. He knew Nia was his daughter? He knew. And he left her? No, Eleanor's voice sharpened. He loved Evelyn. He wanted to marry her. Adrian stared at his aunt. That possibility had never existed in the family history he had been given. Then why didn't he? Margaret. His mother's name sounded different now. Eleanor folded her hands. Your mother believed Evelyn was trying to claim part of Whitmore Holdings through Samuel Carter's original ownership. When she discovered Jonathan intended to marry Evelyn and publicly acknowledge Nia, she panicked. What did she do? She convinced Charles that Evelyn would destroy the company. So they paid her to disappear. They threatened years of litigation first. Adrian turned away. Beyond the archive walls stood an empire celebrated in magazines, universities, hospitals, and charity galas. Suddenly, every polished surface looked borrowed. What happened the night Jonathan died? Eleanor's silence answered before her words did. He was going to Evelyn. Adrian closed his eyes. He had documents proving the Carter family's original stake. He planned to confront Charles the next morning. But he never arrived. No, rain had been falling that night too. Adrian remembered the telephone ringing. His mother collapsing beside the staircase. Charles standing motionless in the library until sunrise. For 20 years, Adrian had believed grief explained their silence. Now silence looked more like fear. Was the accident really an accident? Eleanor looked directly at him. I don't know. That was worse than a lie. Later that afternoon, Adrian returned to the foundation floor as Adam. Nia was standing beside the windows. She turned when she heard his cart. You look terrible. Thank you. I meant worried. So did I. A faint smile appeared, then disappeared. She held out an envelope. This arrived at my desk. Adrian took it. No return address. Inside was a photocopy of an old photograph. Jonathan stood beside Evelyn Carter outside a neighborhood clinic. Evelyn was laughing. Jonathan's arm rested around her shoulders. Between them stood 9-year-old Nia. Adrian's chest tightened. On the back, someone had typed, "Ask why Jonathan Whitmore died before he could tell the truth." Do you know him? Nia asked. Adrian looked up too quickly. The man in the picture. He could lie. Adam White would know nothing about Jonathan Whitmore. But Adrian had reached the edge of what deception could protect. Yes. Nia's face changed. How? Adrian searched for words. Before he found them, the elevator chimed. Every employee nearby suddenly stood straighter. A security officer stepped out first. Then Eleanor Whitmore. Nia recognized her immediately from company photographs. Eleanor crossed the floor without acknowledging anyone. She stopped directly in front of Nia. For several seconds, the older woman simply stared at her. At her eyes. Her face. The unmistakable echoes of someone dead 20 years. Then Eleanor whispered, "You look exactly like Jonathan when you're frightened." Nia went completely still. How do you know my father's name? Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Because Jonathan Whitmore was my nephew. The room seemed to lose all sound. Nia turned slowly toward Adrian. And for the first time since they met, there was no warmth in her gaze. Only suspicion. You said you knew him. Adrian could feel the disguise collapsing around him. Nia stepped closer. Who are you, Adam? And Adrian realized the question he had once desperately wanted someone to ask had finally arrived. Only now, telling the truth might cost him the woman who had loved the man he had pretended to be.